Did you just throw your phone?
No, I did not throw the phone.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Beg Pardon, a special Hall of History episode. As always, I'm your host Anthony, joined by Carlos, and welcome to the show. Beg Pardon, show about everything and nothing at the same time. Possibly the best show, best podcast out there, as voted by my dog Sumo. So you're in for a treat. This week we have Carlos, who is very passionate about this week's topic, as you can see. We are going to be discussing...
We are discussing Wells Fargo Bank, ladies and gentlemen. All the showmen, clowns, and scam artists there are. Actually, we're diving back into the original showmen, which
Why
are...
Wells Fargo? What was that?
Because that was where my student loan was through, so I was like, get out of here.
Oh, okay.
They made me a clown.
We're talking about the circus, folks. Okay, so we're going to be talking about like live entertainment in general, but a deep dive into the circus. I think they all kind of like tie in together.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah. So as with every Hall of History episode, we want to dive in just a little bit into the history of the circus, or what became like the modern day circus, which originated back in ancient Rome, believe it or not. Again, it's not what it is today. So you weren't seeing like an elephant balancing on a ball and somebody like juggling. Yeah, somebody like juggling on the elephant. You weren't seeing that back then. So that's whenever you had like gladiators, stage fighters, trained animals. It was the only time too in ancient Rome whenever men and women were able to like come together. They weren't separated, and it was just for like the spectacle of it.
Are you not entertained?
The modern circus didn't even start until the 18th century. So we're going back into the early mid 1700s by a gentleman named Philip Ashley. So he built the first amphitheater in London, and it consisted of horse tricks performed in a circle. So that's where you start getting into, I guess, the most basic sense of what a circus was. I don't even know if you could call it that at that point.
No, I mean, that's just like equestrian tricks. Like, people do that without a circus.
Yeah.
Like, there's competitions for that, so...
Right. And then no circus is complete without clowns. And then you had your first clown, quote-unquote clown, that was Charles Dibdin. He started performing in 1781. So now we're getting close to the 19th century before we introduce like what became like the theatric element, I guess, of the circus and like clowns in general. But eventually this show started traveling all across Europe in like specially built buildings where they would be able to like execute all these things in. 18 were built around Europe until 10 started becoming more popular, presumably because they were a lot more mobile. They were easier to set up, they were easier to tear down, and it's better than having like a literal like mortar building that you would have to like literally erect to get even a show inside of it. So that's whenever you really start seeing like, oh wow, this is something that takes off. And around this time too, you're going to start having like more of a population and a populace in North America in what is now the United States. So what's his name? John Bill Ricketts. He was trained by a student of Astley's. He founded the first modern American circus. And that was in Pennsylvania in 1793. So almost,
which
again,
is
like
early.
1800s. Yeah, that's super early.
Yeah.
And I'm like, again, it would have been it was a different time. Let me say that. It's not like, because in my mind, it's like some Back to the Future shit, where I'm like where I'm going back there and I'm like, this is so weak. But I obviously wouldn't have thought that, because I would have been from that time. So that's, he himself... as they were starting this here in the United States, he performed horse tricks. There were other entertainers there. There were clowns, rope walkers, acrobats, and it was it was such a big deal here in the United States. It was very modern, very fresh, that even the president of the United States at the time, George Washington, was able to watch and like enjoy the show. And then I think subsequently then you saw, going back all the way, into the 14th century, there was kind of that need and that desire for entertainment, period. But I just think now this is a new, kind of like a new version, if you will, of entertainment for people. So I think that was kind of cool. And the circus in general, that's whenever you start seeing like, okay, a place where people can congregate for entertainment. I think without the circus, you wouldn't have had theme parks. You wouldn't have had SeaWorld. You wouldn't have Six Flags. You wouldn't have Geauga Lake, rest in peace. You wouldn't have Cedar Point. You wouldn't have all of these amusement parks, Dollywood. You wouldn't have all of these things. SeaWorld. If it wasn't for what became like the modern day circus.
Yeah, and I think it's because when circuses kind of started promoting themselves, their marketing was a lot of like lithographs, and it was really colorful, and you had people shouting, on the corners about coming to the circus. It was all something really like in your face and unique and fresh, and there was lights, and there was high risks and high stakes. So I think that kind of built up to the amusement park feel of it. Mm-hmm. Now amusement parks, some across the country and state fairs and stuff, have their own risks. Those rides, I don't know how well they're put together, but I feel like an acrobat when I'm on those rides.
Yeah. I love amusement parks. That's what we should do. We should do a show. We should do a show at amusement parks.
Sure. I love theme parks. Amusement parks are a little...
It could be a theme park based on exhilarating rides. That's the theme.
All right. That's the next one, folks.
So, as with anything... especially in the United States, once an idea or something that's working becomes popular enough, it grabs hold onto people. So then you're really going to start seeing the circus elevate, right? And you're going to see things get bigger and bigger and bigger. In 1869, Dan Costello took his circus all the way from Omaha to California on the Transcontinental Railroad. And again, if it wasn't for... in previous generations, if it wasn't for the advent of the tents and that being the staple of the circus, stuff like that would have been impossible. Yeah. You wouldn't have been able to travel. They still travel today all across the United States. And
which is shocking.
And it just wouldn't have been a possibility at all. But on that leg of the journey, he had 2 elephants, 2 camels on the trip with him. And I think one of the cool things about this, especially at that time, there was no television. There was no National Geographic. There was no other way. Like some of these people, most of these people even, in the United States at that time, you would never see those animals in your life. They didn't exist. Yeah. They didn't exist in your small world as Bakersfield. I don't know if that's a real place, but they didn't exist in your small world there.
Yeah, they were like mythical animals at that point.
Yeah. You might have seen them in a book, but that was it. You weren't going to see them in real life. You weren't going on safaris. You were living in the Dust Bowl out there. There wasn't. You weren't. It was a sad time. You weren't going to be able to see them. So it was cool that you were able to see these animals and experience it and be so close to them. I thought that was really interesting because it latched on to something that people. It provided something that you would never have gotten otherwise.
Yeah, and it was something that, like now, like you said, it's easy to be desensitized to like sensational things, and think like, oh, clowns are cheap. But at that time, that was like the most mind-blowing of entertainment that you can think of.
Correct.
Like you got to see like the scale of an elephant, like literally how big an elephant really is. Mm-hmm. And then you combine that with, a clown or even, somebody who looks a little bit different, because again, the sad side of the circus was they did take a lot of people with deformities or things like that and kind of gave them a storyline to it. And said, they were a cyclops.
Is that sad,
or this.
Is that really a sad part to it? I mean, you have to think back in that, even, I would say less so today. Back then, how else, there was not going to be the ability, right or wrong, clearly wrong, there was not going to be the ability for a lot of these individuals to be accepted in mainstream society. It was not going to happen then. It just wasn't. It was not going to happen. People were not going to treat you well. Period. There was nothing you could have done. So is it wrong? Is it wrong to provide what became like a family to people? You know what? I have a lot of respect and admiration for people that can turn. It's almost like you see. I think now the only thing that you see is like fat comedians making fat people jokes, because and playing off of what ignorant people are saying about you. I have such admiration for people like that. Like there's a video circulating right now, to bring this into like real time. There's a video circulating the internet right now of, I don't know if you saw it, that Asian guy that goes by the name Uncle Roger, and he's like critiquing the BBC lady making rice.
Oh yeah,
and like the accent and everything. And I was like, I admire whenever people can take some, like, to take stereotypes of their culture and in a craftful and skillful way create comedy out of them. And I really appreciate that. And I went to his Facebook page. I went to his YouTube page, and he's a Malaysian comedian, and he creates like these characters. Uncle Roger is like one of his most famous characters, but he dons the accent. He does the stereotypical thing, and I think it's a very admirable thing for people that are able to turn all these stereotypes and create something artful out of it. And I think that's what they did back then.
Yeah, I would agree if they had like a choice, like if there was a mutual contract where Tom Thumb was like, "Hey, PT, I don't want to do this anymore." Not so much P.T. Barnum basically being like, well, I own you, so why don't you get out there and dance? Like, I think that was kind of the more stigma version of it. If it was a mutual thing, that's definitely their platform.
So they never agreed, period, to be in it? Like, they were enslaved from what happened? Because I'm unaware. I'm unaware that they were never allowed to. I'm unaware that they were enslaved, because that's slavery, what you're saying. I was unaware of them being slaves.
I don't know so much if it was like slavery for them as it was like where else are you going to go? Like that type of relationship.
That's true.
Like who else is going to want you type of thing.
Right.
But he found Tom Thumb when Tom Thumb was like 4. He was like 4 years old. So, I mean, you had to make a deal with like his parents at that point. Mm-hmm. But he was small. I think he was like 15 pounds or something like that when he was 4. Like he was really small. And then even later on in his life, like P.T. Barnum did this whole like wedding for him, and then they staged like this fake baby that was really small to make it look like Tom. Like it was a weird time. But then he also had a African American woman that he promoted as being like the oldest living African American woman at the time. I think he tried to say that he passed her off as George Washington's slave at one point, and that was to draw people in, was how old she was. Mm-hmm. She wasn't really that old. And then there were stories of, PT like having her teeth pulled so she looked older and things like that. So like he was doing things that he knew were going to bring people in, but it wasn't the most ethical.
Against the will of the people
Yeah.
involved. Okay. Well, Hugh Jackman
did a phenomenal job.
I was unaware of that. Yeah, Hugh Jackman did a phenomenal job of making P.T. Barnum not look like a sociopath. So that's nice.
100%, yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Speaking of P.T. Barnum.
I was going to say, yeah, speaking of P.T. Barnum, the thing that he also did was he countered on that whole train circus thing. Yeah. And he kind of took it upon himself to make like a 100-wagon show. It was called the Grand Traveling Museum Menagerie. I think that's how you pronounce that word.
Menagerie?
Caravan and Circus. Yeah. So it was like a whole... Not even just a circus. It was a whole like experience type thing. From what it sounds like, it sounds like a World's Tour type thing,
right?
Or World's Fair type thing. So he kind of started doing that more with the trains, and building up his own circus. And his business partner at the time was William Coop, and he actually designed a new flat car and wagon. And what that was able to do was it allowed the laborers to fully load wagons on and off the train. So you didn't have to load it while it was still there. You could just load it and then put it on there. So, I mean, that's pretty, like, amazing engineering for that time to kind of think, like, hey, how are we going to get these animals and all this other stuff through? So P.T. Barnum kind of started that, and he kind of became more of the showman for everyone else. Because, again, he was the one who was getting, like, the weird acts, and he was the one who was finding these people and finding these animals, and he was kind of like the Ripleys before Ripleys. Like, that was basically what P.T. Barnum was doing. And it got to such a height in America that circuses were becoming so popular that people would actually fight and brawl in front of, like, their lithographs because a competing circus was putting their poster too close. So people were actually, like, duking it out for circuses. I've never seen that nowadays.
No, and two, this is before, like, modern cinema.
Yeah.
This is I mean, like, even in the late 1800s, early 1900s, you had, like, the live vaudeville shows, but you would even see vaudeville with circuses. Like, traveling with circuses. So I think it wasn't until, like, the talking pictures that you would see, like, a departure at all from circuses, because there was no other version other than conventional forms of entertainment, right? Singing. Yeah. I don't know if they, other than, like, organized sport, like actual sports, there was no, I mean, like, usually I don't know that the same people going to a baseball game are going to be the same people that go to a circus anyways, you know? I don't know.
Yeah.
But in that realm of entertainment, of live entertainment, there weren't that many competitors in different, like, avenues. Clearly, in circuses there were tons, but because that was the main thing, like how movie theaters are today.
Yeah, there weren't, like, competing similar shows. Like, there wasn't a Cirque du Soleil type thing back then that was going against the circus. It was just the
phenomenal, circus. By the way, Cirque du Soleil.
I've never seen it.
Phenomenal. I've seen 2 of their shows. I saw Beatles.
Really?
Yeah, I saw Beatles Love, and then I saw Caw. I saw Beatles Love in, like, 2015, and I saw Caw year before last, like 2018. And they were absolutely incredible. Like, Caw was probably the best live show I've ever seen in my life.
What?
Yes. My whole life.
The only circus I've been to is Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey, when they were still touring.
Same.
They used to.
Well, outside of the Cirque du Soleil.
Cirque du Soleil that you just said you saw.
Yeah. Well, I don't consider. They were on 2 different levels to me. There's no
way different.
Yeah, there was no compare. I wasn't comparing them. So whenever you asked me, like, prior to the show, if I'd ever been to the circus, which I have, I was literally thinking, like, peanuts. Not $500 Las Vegas tickets. Like, they were completely different things in my mind.
I went to Ringling Brothers a few times, though, and in Manhattan it was cool because, I mean, you're a kid, you don't think about later on when people are like animal cruelty, and you don't think about that as a kid. You're just like, oh my gosh, these elephants are
even the
tails.
adults didn't think about that until, like, the 1980s, 1970s.
I think it was one of those things that it wasn't thought about really because of the fact that people were just getting lost in the atmosphere of it all and the magic of it all, that they didn't really look like ignorance is bliss. You didn't want to think that these animals were being, treated unfairly or mistreated to do these tricks because the tricks made you happy. So you didn't want to think that. You wanted to believe that the elephant loved balancing on that ball and the tiger loved jumping through that ring of fire.
Just like how people in the past wanted to think women didn't want to vote and black people wanted to be slaves. Similar to that. Like, there's just this mentality. It was just this sick mentality. Yeah, that was just like, oh, well, this is the way of life. And
the animals love it. They don't know any better.
Right, yeah.
And like when I was a kid, the elephants used to walk tail by tail through the city, and like they would put the animals on parade, and it was amazing. And I remember going to the circus and seeing all the animals and seeing like the trapeze artists, and then do you remember Ringling Brothers had that like ball of doom or ball of death, and it was like the motorcycles like going around,
Correct. Yeah.
and they would do all those loops. And I just thought, like, this, I mean, this has no place at a circus. I felt that was too contemporary. Like, I was like, you shouldn't have motorcycles and motorized vehicles.
Yeah, they didn't have running engines in the circus.
Yeah.
I'm back in the 1800s. What is this?
I was like, it needs to be all animals.
Yeah.
But, you know, and Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey, their story kind of started with Bailey was the one who, James Bailey, was the one who kind of initiated, there was a storyline to it. And he always wanted that, like, rags to riches type thing because he grew up poor.
Yeah.
So he wanted, you know, the theme that you can connect with through the story where you kind of saw it play out in the circus. That's why later shows, Ringling Brothers always had, like, a theme. Like, there was one year where they had this weird, like, animatronic dragon type thing, and the theme was, like, a dragon. Like, there was always themes to it. And Bailey started kind of being the one to do that circuit and take his shows to, like, Europe, and he was dominating America for a long time. And it was when he came back, I think, from a Europe trip, Bailey had found out that his circus was kind of getting left behind. And he started to do more and more and more, and then out of nowhere... How long was he in Europe? He was only in Europe for a short period of time. He came back to America in, like, 1902.
A lot must have changed for him in that period of time.
Well, the Ringling Brothers kicked up. And Ringling Brothers, I believe there was 5 brothers? 6?
Sure.
I can't remember exactly how many brothers.
Yeah, I don't know.
But Ringling Brothers are the ones who kind of took the game, and they kind of, you know, did the whole America circuit. And then unexpectedly, out of nowhere, James Bailey died. Like, no one expected it. And right after that, the whole market crashed. So the economy in America was not that great in 1907. So that was the perfect time for the Ringling Brothers to go ahead and buy Bailey's Circus. So now you combined these two major shows, so where it was Ringling Brothers and Bailey. I don't know if they kept Bailey's name at that point, but the Ringling Brothers had this massive show, and they bought it back then for less than $500,000, which, I mean, that's still a lot of money.
Our time, our money or their money?
Their money.
Well, yeah, that's a lot.
Like, that's still a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. We should do the calculation on that some other time. But we should do the calculation on that.
Yeah, if you're watching and you want to do the calculation, let us know. Go ahead and do that too. But they kind of try to overextend themselves because they had 2 shows now.
Yeah.
So before they combined, they ran it.
They ran two separate, completely separate
correct,
shows.
Before they combined it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
and
stupid.
then World War I kicked in. So people were like, we don't know how long this is going to last. So that's when they combined the shows, because they were like, well, let's try to get as much revenue as possible. And they ended up making so much more money with the combined shows that they just left it combined. So, and like you said, it was stupid to try to do 2 shows, like to try to, like, franchise out a circus type of thing, because I feel like 1 show is hard enough to put together, but if you try to balance 2, I don't see how that would work. I'm not a financial circus genius or anything.
You look like one.
But I play one on TV, folks.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I want to say still early 1900s, about 1919, P.T. Barnum kind of stepped into the game, and he saw how profitable the Ringling Brothers show was combined, and that's when they kind of meshed it into one giant circus. And P.T. Barnum was already a much older man at this point.
Correct.
When the circus game took off, he was already, like, in his 50s or 60s. He already had the museum, and he already had all those things under his belt. The circus was like a second career for him, basically. Mm-hmm. He was also like a congressman in Connecticut or something like that. Mm-hmm. Like, he was a big deal, and he had a lot of money, thanks to the Jenny Lind tour that you saw. But again, Greatest Showman made it look like they had an affair. Jenny Lind was repulsed by him. There was no romantic connection at all in that.
Again, they had to they had to make it a little gritty for the audiences.
Yeah, give it a little something,
a little spice.
But Ringling Brothers lasted 146 years before they ended.
That's incredible.
Like, yeah.
Well, like I said, it's kind of incredible because there are still circuses out there now that have been around forever. That we're not on that level, but they're still surviving now. But once you get that big, you have to maintain that, and you lose. Like, you can't. And also, there's more attention. Like, I've never been to like a small like mom and pop circus, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty dark. Like I can imagine.
Yeah.
I can imagine. I doubt OSHA code is being followed. You know what I mean? Like I don't think that there's a whole lot of structure.
No. I see a lot of dog tricks in my mind when I think of these. I see a lot of like dog tricks, maybe some horses, maybe like one elephant if they're lucky. I imagine
And
it
God
kind of
bless
like
the treatment of that elephant or those animals.
Yeah. Like I imagine it kind of like that new Disney Plus movie, The One and Only Ivan, where you're kind of like, this is really uncomfortable.
Well, I was reading that these people, I mean, this is their way of life. They've known nothing else. A lot of them are born into the circus, like they're the offspring of like the circus people, and that's their whole life. They interviewed this one woman, and she was like, where else can you get a better, like, the spin on it, like, where else can you get a better life? Like, I get to see and meet people from all over the world. I get to live in the mountains. I get to live in the desert. I get to live on the ocean. I literally get to live everywhere. We have teachers that travel with us. We have a preacher that travels with us. We have Sunday service. This is like your whole family. We all live together. We all work together. We all eat together. We all trust each other. Like it's almost like a commune.
As I say, you have to spin it even for yourself. That this is a great life.
This is okay. This is okay.
Because what else are you gonna do? Like I feel like and not to dog on anybody who is in the circus, but some people have only like that particular set of skills. Like you can flip through the air or you can contort your body. Like, but where else are you gonna use that? Like if that's what you love to do,
like
where else are you
Barnum.
gonna use that?
You sound like P.T. Barnum with those people.
I'm
Who
just
else
saying.
is gonna take you? Who else is gonna take you?
But like I think that's why they people want to stay in the circus is because if I love flying through the sky, where else am I going to find a job where I can fly through the sky?
A pilot?
Like no, I can't. I can't jump out that window and flip like my co-pilot's holding my arm and dangling me back in.
Right.
The pilot.
Well, that's the closest thing I could think of.
But like I mean, there's certain things that and I'm sure there's a family element too. I'm sure they all really do love being, because any job.
Skydiving instructor. Wait, I'm still on this. Then you're in the air.
Yeah, but then you're coming down hard. That's like if you were.
You're not going to hit the ground hard.
But you're hitting that water. It's like concrete at a certain height.
What?
Water. If you hit water at a certain height, it's like concrete.
Who skydives into water? I've never seen that.
You're a thrill seeker. You gotta go big or you gotta go home.
No one skydives into water. You get tangled in the parachute in the Atlantic Ocean, swallowed by a shark. Swallowed by a whale.
Swallowed.
Swallowed by a whale.
A megalodon just swallowed you in the ocean.
Then you're hanging out with Jonah. That was Jonah, right? Jonah? Is that Jonah?
Jonah was with the whale, yeah.
Okay. My apologies.
Captain Ahab was with the whale, too. That was Moby Dick.
Got you.
So, if you want to do literature history, folks, let us know. We'll also go down Moby Dick's history.
Yeah, that'll be the next episode, the next Hall of History.
But I get the family element of it, but also, like we were talking about the accusations and the mistreatment and stuff.
Yeah.
There was a black spot on the circus's record because in 1944, the Hartford Circus had a really bad fire. And I don't know if anybody's ever been like in a tent or anything, but there's not a lot of exits.
Correct.
Like it's kind of hard to get out of the bleachers and everything. And that fire, it took the lives of 168 people and 487 were seriously injured. So I don't know how many people fit in a tent, but I feel like that was almost everyone.
Yeah, it sounds like there was some fire code being broken there. Yeah, I don't know how big that tent was.
But even with that, no one from Ringling Brothers really got charged with anything. I mean, they got arrested, but no one was ever charged with. They didn't say what they caused the fire from everything I saw.
Okay.
But I'm assuming, and again, you shouldn't do this, but I'm assuming if it's a tent and there's hay, I'm assuming that something got knocked over, like a lamp or a lantern.
Yeah.
And
What year was
the
it?
whole thing went up. 1944.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people smoked ciggies back then too.
Probably,
Throw
yeah.
a cigarette in there, and you could smoke in the tents then. Hell, back then you could smoke anywhere.
I was gonna say there wasn't. I mean, when we were kids, even there was a smoking and non-smoking section of restaurants.
Yeah, which did not make any sense.
I mean, none.
I remember I went to Pizza Hut, and they'd asked my dad, like, smoking or non-smoking? And in my mind, I was like, please, non-smoking. Like, I just don't want smoking. All right? And I literally had, like I could taste I was getting addicted to the nicotine just from eating, like, pepperoni. It was thick. It was
so
thick.
imagine being in a tent.
Yeah. It was hazy. It was like I was at a rock concert at Pizza Hut. Like, all the fog. It was.
You were at an Eagles concert there at Pizza Hut.
Right. They're at the Pizza Hut. That's how that's done. Down there at the Pizza Hut.
But, yeah, so Ringling Brothers, anyway, they lasted... they lasted 146 years, and I'm pretty sure to this day, Ringling Brothers still travels, but it's overseas. I don't think they travel in America at all.
No.
But I'm pretty sure
I didn't even know that they were traveling overseas.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure last I saw they still had some shows in like Europe and stuff.
Where the morals are a little looser.
Well, I think they got rid of the elephants and everything.
Put them down.
They put them in sanctuaries.
Sanctuaries or zoos? Because that should be another Hall of History for us. We'll talk about zoos. That's the thing too. I mean, like people are like, oh no, like you can't have circus anymore because they mistreat the animals.
Mm-hmm.
Have any of y'all been to the Pittsburgh Zoo? I'll tell you, those containment, the animal little containers that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't even think they could walk a full body's length. Some of them are just pacing in circles. That's animal abuse.
Well, and again, we'll get into that another time. But some zoos, like Bronx Zoo, Atlanta Zoo, I mean, they're massive. The San Diego Zoo.
Yeah.
You know, not all of them are Joe Exotic Zoo. And I don't think any elephants went there. I'm pretty sure they went to, like, the big zoos or, like I said, the sanctuaries or, I don't even know. I doubt any
safaris to be hunted by Jimmy John's founder.
Good Lord.
Well, I'm telling you. I'm not saying that it was intentional. I'm not trying to say anything's intentional. I'm just saying that I think people focus really heavily on the circuses and saying like all these things are inappropriate whenever you have people going on safaris to kill animals all the time. Still, you have these zoos that mistreat animals even unintentionally. Still, no one's boycotting zoos, but people are getting real sick about the circuses. Why?
Yeah,
that's what I'm curious about.
I can see the argument of, well, at the zoo, no one comes out and like cracks a whip and makes the lion jump through something, or the elephant has to do a trick to get his food. You know, they wait
till everyone leaves. You don't know. You don't know.
That's their break. But I mean,
I saw Planet of the Apes. I saw how they treat those monkeys.
But I mean, yeah, it's hard. And then also, you know, how do you rehabilitate those animals?
You don't. Like, that would be like literally me dumping my dog outside. I mean, I'm not, and I don't even like. I'm sure I am not the most. I don't spoil him like more than anyone in the world. But I mean, for Christ's sake, my dog wears clothes and enjoys his clothes. He enjoys his little hoodies. He likes having them on. So like, that would be like me just dumping him outside and being like, "Best of luck to you, Skip." His name's Sumo, but you get the point. Like it's like doing that. You can't. He would just be like, "Dude, WTF?" Like, there would they have like emotional attachments too. Like it wouldn't. I just couldn't imagine having animals in a routine, whether positive or negative, and then being like, "Oh, it's fine now. We're releasing them." To what?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and even just not even the animals part of it, but the clowns and everyone. I mean, there was a whole clown college.
God, I hate clowns.
In Florida.
Yeah.
It's a skill. The clown college they were saying it was harder to get into than Harvard because you had to know magic, you had to know how to juggle, and you had to come up with your own face paint that hasn't been used in the 100-some years of clowns. So like that's tough. Steve-O graduated from that college.
I remember reading that. a long time ago.
Yeah.
I mean,
He
he's like
graduated from that
60 years
college.
old now, so there's a while.
He's up there.
A while.
And the guy from Modern Family that plays Cameron, he didn't graduate, but he went to the college twice, and they rejected him twice. Because it's a hard school to get into. But I believe the makeup that he used in Modern Family when he was a clown, I'm pretty sure that's his makeup. Like, that's his clown shtick that he does in Modern Family. So, I mean, now you have all these clowns that, like, where are you going to go to get that same thrill of the game? I mean, the only people that I've seen that had as much fun as a clown at work is like the Harlem Globetrotters, when they throw like the fake bucket of water and it's glitter type of thing.
I think they'd have to go into like entertainment, like movies, live entertainment, live shows, Cirque du Soleil. But that's really tough to get into too.
Oh, okay, that's tough too.
That's like the Harvard of like gymnastics.
Is that a known fact, or are you just?
I just made that up. It is. Can you do it?
I haven't tried, but
all right.
Give me a little bit.
All right.
I don't wear this for fun, okay? This is a serious... You dress for the job you want.
And you look great.
And I look the part.
Yeah. And you look fantastic. So eventually you had PETA coming out against these circuses.
Yeah.
And all these different companies and being like, hey, you guys can't have that. And I think too, like, there was a shift in what people wanted to see. Because then people were like, like, is that elephant crying? I think we're going to leave. Like, Chelsea, get the kids. We're going to go.
I mean, it got to a point where, and also entertainment itself kind of kept stepping up the game. Because now you had, like, things like Disney on Ice, where it was these amazing, ice skaters who were also incorporating like family-friendly themes and movies, and now your kids can see that, and they don't have to see, an elephant or a lion being mistreated or a tiger. Or you had things like Medieval Times and things like that popped up that were dinner shows that kind of did the same type of thing, minus, again, these exotic animals being paraded around. So I think as entertainment kept going up and up and up, people kind of looked at the circus as you're a relic of the past. And now we can all see your ugly side because we have all these other forms of entertainment. So I think it's time that you ran your course. I mean, similar in the way that, SeaWorld used to have the killer whale show or the orca show. And that kind of slowly started to phase out because as time went on, people were thinking, these tanks they're big, but they're still not killer whale big.
Right.
Like, these aren't orca-sized tanks.
There's enough for him to, like, invert his body, go down and pop back up, and just in this continuous motion.
Yeah, so, even a giant corporation like SeaWorld took a big hit.
Yeah.
Because we have movie theaters, we have movies, we have amusement parks, like you had mentioned before. We have theme parks, you have dinner shows, you have zoos, and zoos that kind of, like I said, stepped it up in terms of what they offer, how big the spaces are for the animals.
Except for Pittsburgh.
Things like that. Except for Pittsburgh, which is a really inclined zoo, too, by the way. That's a steep entrance to that zoo.
The whole city is like...
Yeah.
The whole city is just like in this... It looks like somebody took like an RPG and just blew the ass off a mountain and then put the city in there. It does. It does.
A lot of hills. A lot of hills in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. It's a hilly ass.
That escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
And I think, like I said, that's why the circus kind of went downhill. much like the episode about the circus.
Absolutely. So I don't know if you guys learned anything about the circus today. Similar to the circus.
I hope you did.
Yeah, similar to the circus. This is a show. So we hope you enjoyed
end in
it.
a fiery crash.
Right. Yeah. All of our links to our social media are going to be below this video for you guys. Thank you again. We try to say this every week, and honestly, we do mean it. Thank you guys so much for continuously turning into our show, especially our podcast version. Do not be afraid to watch our YouTube version of the show. We would like that as well. So thank you. Shameless plug. But we appreciate all of you guys turning into the podcast. It's just been, honestly, it's just been a joy to make. And we like doing the halls of history for you guys, because sometimes even we're not like super knowledgeable about the topics, and it gives us a reason to dive into them and to spend a couple weeks learning about something and educating ourselves. So it's just been awesome.
Yeah.
So thank you guys so much.
Yep. And again, if you like this video, found it entertaining at all, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button on the channel so you can find out when we have other videos. If you didn't find it entertaining at all, I don't know what to tell you. This was probably one of the more entertaining things you can hear today, with a little bit of a lesson, folks. And then don't forget to listen to the audio versions like Anthony had mentioned on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Pandora. As always, he's been Anthony. I've been the decked out Carlos. And remember, if you haven't been to the Beg Pardon Show channel lately, you haven't been to the Beg Pardon Show channel. Until next time.